Hi everyone, I'm doing my next chapter of my John Maxwell. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And this is by John Maxwell, New York Times best-selling author. I'm using it as part of my leadership development series. And I'm focusing on immigrants, people coming to Canada, especially women who are looking for support and to learn how to navigate over here. I think some of the principles that are in the book we know like intuitively, but some of it is good to reflect on and to learn from. And there's a nice quote in this book that I like from John Maxwell's teaching. It basically says that if life were fair, Elvis would still be alive and all the impersonators would be dead, by Johnny Carson. And I think that's very well worth reflecting on, because life is not fair, and that's picking up from the previous chapter that I had finished talking about. Sometimes our lives can go from being a dream to being a nightmare, not because of anything we have done, but because of circumstances or policies or decisions that others have made. But sometimes it is our fault. Sometimes it is choices to become drug addicts or to become people that will not take responsibility. And so the first point that he's making is that we have to take responsibility for our own lives. And he gives a powerful example here of Ted Williams, not the baseball player, but it's a person that they refer to as radio in America, and how he had initially started out with his dream of working in radio and the steps he took to complete that. When he joined the United States Army, he was recruited into communications, and then he got a job with a small radio station there. And he began to see some success, but then he had some jail time. He had a scrape with the law, and so he had to go to jail. And then he worked at a nightclub or concerts, wherever he could get work. And it just goes on to his story about how he started drinking, he became an addict, and he got into crack cocaine, and his life fell apart. He went into poverty and homelessness, and he had an offer from Dr. Phil Collins to change his life, but he couldn't keep that commitment. It only lasted 12 days, and he gave up. And then finally, after consuming enough alcohol and crack, he finally had enough, and he went back to Dr. Phil and asked him to help him. He asked for another chance. No addict is ever cured, but he did take control of his life, and he was learning. He was learning how to change and how to grow. So I think that happens with life sometimes. Sometimes people make choices intentionally to do things, to become addicts, to become alcoholics. But for some of us, it's not the case. We still have to fight being victims. We have to fight the victim mentality, and we have to live in a world that is unfair and it is unjust, and take the steps to learn, to grow, to look for opportunities. And I think as long as we're learning and growing and adapting to our circumstances, there isn't more that we can do. We can keep our faith and we can ask God to help us. But it is challenging if you're coming from a different culture, a different environment. I think if you are fortunate and you get to travel and see different places in the world, that helps, because then you can compare the culture here to culture maybe in Wales or Scotland or America, if you have the opportunity to live in those places and to work in those places. And you can see how you can adjust. And if you don't have the training, if you don't have the coaching to guide you, it becomes very difficult. That's one of the things that I had to learn in my work in the call center, because working with Americans is very different to working with Canadians. So I had to have coaching almost on a daily basis until I got used to working with them. And then also, like, you watch movies, you see how they are, and you think, like, really? Is that really how they are? And then you discover, yes, that's really how they are. So you have to adjust to them, and you have to take steps to change. And if we don't change, if we don't adjust, then we're going to die. We're going to be left behind. So I took steps to change. Whatever they told me to change your voice, change how you talk, change this, change that, I changed it. So even the people that know me, when I go into the places, I go to some places here that I shop at regularly. I go to a bakery here where they make fresh pastries and things. I don't go that often, but they know me and they know my personality. And when I went to the bakery today, I was talking to the young man behind the counter. Then he told the other customer, oh, they changed her. So people notice the change. But if you don't change, you're going to land up not having a living, not earning, and not having anything. So you have to change. You have to do what they do. I learned also how to change the response of my emails depending on the tone of the email. It's very different working with the Americans. But we do change and we do grow, and we have to. We have to, otherwise nothing is going to work out for us. And then we give control of our lives to other people, and our dreams get spoiled. Our dreams get shattered. Because I'll give you the example when there was the run on the banks here, the SVP Bank, and there was a problem with the bank was in California, but they have offices here, and how it became a big problem. So with the bankers, they always like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not a big problem. But everybody got up in arms about it, and it became a big problem because the public spoke out against what they were doing and they got caught. And that's how things are. Sometimes if we don't take care of the small things, then the small things end up becoming humongous. And there's an example in here that John Maxwell gives about the parachuters. So there are people that their job is to pack the parachutes for the military when they're going to jump from the planes. And what they do is they get them to pack it, and one is chosen at random, and people have to use that to jump, the people who are packing it, because then it's their own lives that are at risk. And it might sound extreme, but that's the care that we take in our work, because we don't just do it like just, oh, I'm just here to get the paycheck. We do it with that care and that love, that knowing that this is affecting somebody's life, whether it's a sale or packing a parachute or selling a product that's gone stale in the store. We take that same care to know that we wouldn't like that to be done to us. We wouldn't like our children to be kidnapped or to be trafficked or to be out of work for a year. So we do it with that same care and with that same compassion, and we learn from our failures. I had to learn from all my failures, wherever I made mistakes in my work, in my responses, in how long I took to reply to people. And it's very hard if the response times are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and you don't have a template and you have to think of what to say. So I had to develop my own templates, keep them ready, and then I could copy and paste those templates in responding. But when you're working in a startup, it's very hard because you don't have all those things. So you have to develop them, you have to come up with them. then you have to share them with the team, and then they benefit from the time, the effort that you've put in, and their lives are easier when they join the team. So it's different working for a startup, it's different working for an established company, it's different working for a company that maybe the head office is in America, compared to working for a company where you're working with people, you're going in, you're seeing them every day. E-commerce is very different to working for a bricks and mortar place where you can actually see the people, talk to them, you know who they are, you can see their facial expressions. It's very different working online because you don't get all those social cues that you get when you are seeing somebody and you're meeting somebody. All the social cues are gone. So all you have to go by is the tone of their voice if you're speaking to them, or the chat, the words that they're using. So it can be very, at least for me, it was a very steep learning curve because I am used to working with people face to face. And even for spiritual direction, when I take people for spiritual direction, I prefer to do it face to face because it's much more personable and it's much nicer than doing it virtually or doing it over an email or doing it over a message. It's much nicer because you can see the person, you can talk to them, and now we have WhatsApp, so that helps for that kind of thing. Or FaceTime, we have other things like that. But we all make choices, and it starts with responsibility for our own lives. It's the same choice that I made when I decided I wanted to go and study in South Africa and get my BCom. It was my choice. I took responsibility for that. I worked hard, I studied, I made mistakes, I failed papers until I passed. I took extra courses and I paid for extra tutoring. I worked and studied at Wits. So that's the way that I did it. Others can choose their own path. And for me, I feel that it really depends on you. There's a lot of people here that get jobs without having the education because they know people in companies and then they bring them in and they mentor them and they help them get to the most senior levels. But for me, I didn't come in knowing anybody who was working in the executive, who was going to take me in and treat me with love and compassion. So I took the courses, I took the education because I wanted to learn and I wanted to be successful. And I wanted to have an income and a roof over my head and buy my own food, buy a car, buy a house. So I took those steps for myself and I took responsibility for my own life. And that's something we can learn from reading this chapter as well. So that's what I got out of it. This first point here, the story is about when this guy was standing at the side of the road, Ted Williams, and he was asking for handouts from passengers in their cars. And a driver with a video camera stopped and said, "Hey, I'm going to make you work for your dollar. Say something with that great radio voice." And he stepped up with his wild, uncut hair and responded by launching into a well-practiced spiel with a magnificent voice built for radio. So that's how they found him, and you can find his videos on YouTube if you want to look him up. He appeared on the Today Show, Entertainment Tonight, and Dr. Phil with a feel-good story that people connected with. Homeless man with great talent gets a break, but they didn't know all the story behind it that I just told you about how he went into addiction and drugs and crack cocaine and how he wasted his opportunities by destroying his own life. And so for us, we have to learn from that. For me, yes, I know I also destroyed my own health, but really and truly, it was either take that overnight shift or land up with nothing. because there was nobody to go live with. There was nobody to stay with. Family told me, we don't know what you're going to do. You go on welfare if that's what you need to do. So I stayed in the job, and I have to live with the decisions I made. But I did have a roof over my head. I had a bed to sleep on, and I had food and clothing. I was able to buy myself some nice shoes. So it's pros and cons. I would rather have done that. And would I have made the same decisions again? Yes, I would. Because I would rather do that and then have to end up living in the street, living on a tent, or being on a program waiting 3 years for subsidized housing. Because I can't even afford the basic housing. I can't even afford to get onto a program like what the Carter Center offers here in Canada, because I don't earn enough to do that. And I'm doing everything I can to get myself into a good paying job with a day shift. I always have. It's not like I just sat back and said, oh, I'm just going to sit here at home and the job will come to me. I've never done that. I'm posting now how I'm going out, how I'm pounding the pavements. But for 20 years, I never did that. I never showed anybody how hard it was. I never told them when I was going out, looking for resumes, networking, going to HRPA events, going to trade shows, going to the Air Canada Center. I just did it. But now I'm doing it because this is a state of desperation where you're doing everything right and nothing seems to be working out. So I want people to learn from me and to know that life is not fair. If life was fair, Elvis would be alive and all the impersonators would be dead, and I would still have a job. So we can't give up. We have to persevere, and we have to take responsibility and do it with the care of those packers who are packing that parachute for somebody that's going to jump out of a plane. Because what's happening in our society is important. It might be me buying the salt today with the plastic in, or the orange crush that was sent to me through Amazon with the glass in it, and me not knowing. And it might have been my life that was taken. But because somebody noticed it, because I noticed it, and I called Amazon and I said, hey, is this orange crush okay? And they said, no, actually we are going to release a statement saying that it needs to be thrown out and we'll refund you your money. I saved my own life. So it's up to you if you want to save your own life and the lives of those around you, or if you don't care. But I care. So that's why I'm doing this, because I'm not giving up on my dreams and my hopes and my music and getting to where I want to be. And I paid the price for it. I invested in my education. I worked overnight. I did all the things I had to do. So I'm waiting for my break to come so that I can earn my living. And I'm not the jealous type. I think that if people work hard and if you do well in life, it's good for you. I support people when they achieve their dreams and their accomplishments. And if they want to take time off and go on a long holiday, I support them. I think companies should reward that kind of loyalty and not do us down for being loyal and working hard and being dedicated workers. But in fact, what's happening today in society is the exact opposite. And like Deacon Bill said, if every Catholic said, we would like to have Good Friday off, how would they refuse in this country? But because they know they have the power and that they just won't give it, they just won't swap it, they do whatever they like. They have to care about us just as much as we care about our jobs. That's what has to happen.